get up, and on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, all right? And we're going to stand up, and then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down, all right? And on the way up, we're going to take your other kneecap, and we're going to get up, and then it's going to take 3 shots to get us down.
Hey, what do you say, Kneecaps Nation? We are back again for another serving of Kneecaps for breakfast. Vince Progard, that's me. Happy to be joined, as always, by the man, the myth, the legend, whatever else you want to use to fill in the blank, Phil Byrne.
Fill in the blank. I see what you did there, Vince. Also, this is not a Chicago Cubs podcast. I thought you were doing the Cubs thing there to start the show. So,
no, we're not flying any W's or whatever it is they do on the north side. That's they can have that. But
yeah.
They made me think, though, we need to start our own tradition. Like every time the Lions win, we got to do something of some type of relevance to mark the occasion. I just am not creative enough to figure out what that thing is or could be.
GMAT cash, Lions win again, and just play it as loud as possible.
Sure, something like that. Yeah. Screw the HOA and the noise ordinances. We can do whatever we want. Like Lionel Richie intended, all night long.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, no, great activity off that weekend game out in Kansas City that we'll touch on, as well as some other topics that we got on tap for this week's episode of the pod.
Yeah, and we got topics, that's for sure. And as always, wouldn't you know it, everything gets going on a Monday. As some of you who are new to the podcast, and we appreciate you joining us and being on board with Phil and myself. But as it always seems to go, there always seems to be something that happens on Monday, and we typically record on Sunday in the interest of getting some hard-hitting, real-time breakdown of the games that take place, at least 17 occasions out of the year, so it just makes sense to stay with that format. But Monday, once again, last week, Phil, was something that had a lot of news associated with it, in that, number one, I'll keep it localized here before we branch into something else. It was a nighttime practice down at Lions training camp that was, if I'm not mistaken, Phil, it was just the Lions loyal or the season ticket holders that were invited to that event on Monday of last week, and not one, not two, but 3 different guys who are expected to make some level of strong impact on this team went down with some level of injury. You have Jahmyr Gibbs on the offense, who went down with a hamstring injury, and both of the top 2 draft picks in Terrion Arnold and Ennis Rakestraw, 2 of your corners, went down with injury as well. Fortunately, all 3 of them seem to be in pretty decent shape. It's one of those things where if it was a regular season game coming up, they probably would have been okay to give it a go out there. But it seems like you probably want to bubble wrap all 3 of those guys and just say, hey, let's see you on September 8th. But, Phil, it could have been a lot worse with all 3 of those guys.
Could have been a whole lot worse. Yeah, you're right. All 3 of them are, especially with Gibbs, supposed to play a significant role this fall. So injuries happen, especially the very kind of light injuries that they're dealing with in camp. It's funny, the pads come on, the physicality increases, and you think, okay, so here, we're going to get guys injured because they're finally making a lot of contact. It's always like the off-ball play, the non-contact injuries. Those are truly the ones that I always worry about the most.
They're silent killers.
Yeah, where your leg bends in, an incorrect way. Something happens with your ankle, your hamstring, Achilles, you name it. I mean, those things are just what you don't want to see. But bubble wrap season's here. We got 1 game to go. Obviously very, very measured with who played in that game on Saturday. And for probably good reason, even though Kansas City took their first unit out there for the whole first half, really.
At least the offense. We didn't see Chris Jones or anybody out there on defense that was going to make a strong impact, but the Lions did have a chance to get to see what a real live breathing offense looked like. And as you said, Phil, no hard hitting defensive player really got any action for the Lions to really test them necessarily, but it was a good way to see what some of the younger guys are able to do, what some of the depth guys are able to offer. And in case you're living out from under a rock the last 24 to 48 hours or so, the Lions did come away with a 24-23 victory at Arrowhead Stadium against the Kansas City Chiefs, the Super Bowl defending Chiefs. I keep forgetting that they went back to back on the Super Bowl. So that was a situation where the Lions were able to make it 2 in a row at Arrowhead Stadium, one that counted a year ago, almost 12 months ago. Phil, your overall thoughts on that game as we watched about a day and a half ago?
Yeah, so that first quarter at times was a little sluggish. It was a little reminiscent of what we saw out in the Meadowlands, but key contributors really stepped up. I think you saw some folks that were getting real comfortable with the reps that they were getting, making the most of their opportunity in the game. Patrick Mahomes, obviously, with the behind the back shovel pass that he had out to Travis Kelce, that's going to get the headlines. Mahomes did look good. There's no denying it. I mean, he is the best quarterback in the NFL for a reason. But really impressed with the Lions' competitive spirit. At times, things were very much the same under Nate Sudfeld. But he, even to the dismay, to the discredit of his haters, his non-believers, folks that, like you and I, Vince, just 1 week ago, were saying he has no place on this job. He led some all right drives, more than acceptable for like a third or fourth string. Again, I don't want him as the Lions' primary backup, but I think if you are a Lions fan and you watched 20 minutes of this game, I think you should come away impressed with some of the takeaways or what you can kind of grasp at with some of these guys that this is really their first extended look in a Lions uniform. Vaki, unbelievable. Isaiah Williams, the effort that he had. Hendon Hooker really bounced back and came back with a great performance, this week. So I think those are the three standouts in my opinion. Vaki especially, I think we all knew about his versatility. He has barely played that running back spot, and I think we both love Craig Reynolds, but if you got three running backs on this team, I think Reynolds is the odd man out. Vaki looks for real. He is an absolute hammer with the ball. Like, he's gonna hit a guy. He's gonna get open and make some plays catching the ball, and he's just getting started. It's crazy that this guy was out there, and at the time it seemed like the Lions jumped on him, and that he wasn't really selected in the right round. And what are the Lions doing? What is Brad Holmes doing? But Vince, aren't these the picks that always seem to pay off for Brad Holmes, where it's like the ones where it's like, oh, well, what's Brad Holmes doing here? He's trading up to go get a guy. But it looks like there's conviction behind this pick.
Either that or you have something totally bizarre where they nail their first two picks, and then it's like, oh, hey, we're going to trade up to get Hendon Hooker, where at the time seemed the most bizarre pick imaginable. Or, oh, hey, we're going to go get Broderick Martin. Huh?
Yeah.
But then again, you see, okay, fourth round, we're going to get Amon-Ra St. Brown, which obviously hindsight 2020, that seems to have paid off tenfold. Now this kid,
just a little bit,
Dione Vaki, stud out there. And I think you're onto something, Phil, where obviously I love having Craig Reynolds as part of this team, but I don't know how you can leave Vaki out of there with what he's able to offer for you, both offense, defense, and special teams. And I think he really showed in the fourth quarter yesterday how they went to him 3 times in a row through the air, no less, that this guy can do it catching the ball. He can do it running the ball. He's obviously a defender that he played quite a bit of in college, as well as special teams. So this guy, I think, in my mind, solidified a roster spot yesterday for the 53-man roster.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Yeah. And I think he's one too that I can see Ben Johnson just like licking his chops because you think about the playmaking capability that Jahmyr Gibbs has, the dependability, the durability, the strength between the numbers, the ability to break tackles that David Montgomery has. Vaki's got a little bit of a different element, yet he still kind of plays with the passion that both of those two guys has as well. Um, I think he's perfect for this team, and yeah, I think he's making the team, and I think Ben Johnson's gonna come out with 3 to 5 plays each game, as like Vaki plays that. Just throw him in there, give him a little wrinkle, whether or not he catches the ball, whether or not it's actually a rush for him or not. Just seeing what we saw in that last game, that some of these defenses are going to have to prepare for him, and that's just something that you want to bring to the table.
Now, I know I went on about a 5-minute soliloquy last week where you basically shut your microphone off and just let me go to town last week about Hendon Hooker and about how I didn't believe he was ready to be the backup quarterback this year for the Lions. Now, I still am not ready to back off from that. I'm not here to walk anything back or to offer up any apologies or anything like that. I do stand by what I said because that was the second and third team defense for the Chiefs that he went up against in the second half. So thinking that he will take what we saw in the second half against the Chiefs and apply that towards the first team of insert team here, I'm not ready to go that far yet. But once again, kind of like what we saw in minute spurts last week, we saw it on a bigger scale in the Chiefs game. We saw yet another glimpse of what this kid is capable of. And knowing that if this kid really has the athleticism and the arm and the decision making, and he's able to get some reps and some comfort underneath him, we might be talking backup quarterback in the short term, but could he be the heir apparent to Jared Goff in a few years? Who knows? It just depends on what the development looks like, but we saw some glimpses of what this kid is capable of.
Yeah, we absolutely saw some glimpses. We have a quarterback that can actually run and move the chains a little bit. And I know Stafford got a little bit more agile in his tenure with the Lions, but you don't really feel comfortable with Goff doing that. If it's like 3rd and 12, you don't want him to just go take off. Like I wouldn't expect him to, get the first down.
And nor does Ben Johnson's offense require that out of the quarterback.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, Hendon Hooker, I mean, that's a threat in the red zone when you're a quarterback, but you have to run like that. He's a different quarterback than Jared Goff, and I don't know, kind of as you alluded to, if this offense is the perfect fit for him, but again,
might not matter if Ben Johnson doesn't stick around after this year.
That's kind of what I was getting to. Yeah, exactly. So again, long game. Jared Goff got his contract. He's their quarterback, both now and really for the future. So, Hendon Hooker is like 25, 26. So, even if he was around for a while, he should be on kind of a discount deal, you would think, being the Lions' backup quarterback for a while. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves again. It is the second or third team defense. Very impressed though with what I saw. I thought he composed himself very, very well. And again, there was something just with the vibe, from that last week game. And the weather was bad, but I also think there was just some bad blood between the teams that just spewed over, and a lot of players probably just weren't.
The fighting from the joint practices earlier in the week probably had something to do with that, to where they were almost maybe a little bit too standoffish and tentative in that game. And the weather couldn't have been better in Kansas City over the weekend. It looked like a great day for football down there at Arrowhead, and there was no issues to worry about whatsoever. So what I'm wondering, Phil, is with one more preseason game left coming, and we'll break that game down a little bit more detail later on in the episode, do you stick with Hendon Hooker and maybe ride the wave and let him get the start this coming Saturday? Or do you roll with the man that you've rolled with so far as My wife likes to refer to him as Nate Sudafed Sudfeld. But what do you do there?
I like that. I like that. Tell Cassie that's a good one. With Sudafed there.
Just
Yeah,
kind of
no,
puts you to sleep with that
yeah,
play style that he's got there. Not nearly as
yeah,
exciting as Hendon Hooker.
yeah, yeah. It's got to be. It's got to be Hecker, Johnny Hecker.
Johnny Hecker, the punter.
Yeah. No, it's got to be
Nice
Hendon
pull.
Hook. It's got to be Hendon Hooker's opportunity. Let him play with a true second unit. I would assume that that's going to be out there. Let him get a little bit more time with Vaki as well. But like let's some of those Lions receivers, like the Donovan Peoples Jones, Kennedy, some of these guys that have a decent shot of making the team. Let him get out there and play with, for as long as he can.
Yeah, or like a James Mitchell or
Yeah,
somebody that we know will see some snaps.
yeah. Still crazy to me that Brock Wright is at a tier above playing in the preseason, but when you got championship expectations, you don't want to chance it, and that's kind of where we're at.
Got to keep
with this
one
team.
on ice and number 2 on ice, so at least you got 2
Yeah.
healthy tight ends going into the season.
For sure. So, but that's where we're at, and I think it is absolutely Hendon Hooker's time to get the start in this next game.
Out of fear that Hooker would not be 100% or ready to go, the Lions did go out early in the week and pick up Jake Fromm off the scrap heap. I'm not sure if he'll even wind up so much as taking a snap for the Lions, but at least they brought him aboard for some quarterback depth. And shout out late 20 teens Georgia football, right?
Yeah, but also
Or
it
would that
seems
be
very
mid 20 teens even?
yeah. It just seems very convenient that the Lions made that move right before playing the Kansas City Chiefs and State Farm spokesman Patrick Mahomes. Not that Mahomes and Jake Fromm would have been on the field at the same time, but obviously Jake Fromm from State Farm, Jake from State Farm.
That's a
Yeah,
good pull by you there, Mr. Byrne, in the
yeah. It's no
comedy.
Sudafed, but
No, but my
yeah.
wife is funnier than probably both of us combined, or at least she
I
she
think
is.
so. Yeah.
Absolutely. But one thing that I think we also nailed down in the Chiefs game is that, hands down, Phil, Jake Bates is the
Yeah.
guy that will be starting week 1 as the kicker without discussion.
Yeah.
55-yarder to get the scoring going, nailed the 43-yard game winner to walk things off. Did miss an extra point on the day, but was a perfect 4 for 4 on the field goal attempts. Of course, field goals are worth more than extra points, so I guess if I'd rather have you missing one thing, I'd rather have you missing some extra points and making all your field goals, but I digress. Good day for the kid out of the Michigan Panthers.
Yeah. So I like the fact that in season again the outcome of these games do not matter. It's the next rep, it's the next opportunity, and then when you do make a mistake, still having the ability to try to right the wrong. And Jake Bates absolutely got that by hitting the game winner, following missing that extra point. He's been impressive in this preseason. These last 2 games, and I know even people out at practice when they've opened it up and they've had live kicking going on have walked away impressed. And I think the Lions have a real find here, just kind of like with Vaki and some of these other guys that they were able to pull out of what seemed like absolute obscurity. Even though he was in the UFL, but he really didn't do place kicking full time while he was in college or anything. So kind of unique story there, but I think the Lions have built it into their DNA under Dan Campbell that we are going to take risks. We are going to rely on the numbers and analytics when we are presented with a 4th and short. So I think just having a dependable kicker is just that. I don't think it is going to change how Dan Campbell is going to coach. I don't think we should go into the season thinking that we're just going to bottle things down and we're going to be super conservative and we're just not going to go for the touchdown, for the first down when those opportunities present itself. But my God, like he's just got to work on being a little bit more consistent because he's crushing these kicks.
Well,
Like he's clearing these. These aren't ones that are just like not going over the crossbar.
or like the one last week in the Meadowlands that was for 53 yards, they had another 10 yards to spare
Yeah,
on it. He had a
yeah,
little bit more leg on the 55 one he nailed over the weekend. And I know what you say about the analytics, and I think it's all true and valid and everything like that. How if you break it all down, even like on Sunday Night Football, how they bring up the little bug on the scoreboard that
yeah.
shows X% chance field goal, X% chance of going for it on fourth down or what have you. We all know what the numbers say, but I would be lying to you if I didn't think that there was a little bit of a lack of confidence in
Mm.
kickers of yesteryear with whether it be Austin Seibert or Riley Patterson or Badgley or whatever the case may be, where I think that made the decision a little easier to maybe go for it more often on some of those fourth downs because there may have been a lack of confidence in knowing that the guy that you trot out is going to go out there and make a 40-plus yard field goal. And anymore, in today's NFL, you got to be able to hit a 40, 50-yard field goal almost on an automatic level. I remember the old days when it seemed like Jason Hansen and Morton
Yeah.
Anderson were really the only two guys that could go out there and hit a 50-yard field goal with ease. Obviously, having a leg is a skill, but it's also more or less a necessity in today's NFL. So I think the fact that Jake Bates is proving himself as being able to have a more reliable leg may make the decision making where it's more or less a coin flip a little bit easier for Dan Campbell to peruse through once it gets to a high pressure in game situation in the regular season or the playoffs.
Yeah, without a doubt. Like he is a guy that um he's got the leg on it. Um the other Lions kickers that they've had the last couple of years, they don't have the power that he has had. They're, you know, uh selling or what they were known for was being a little bit more consistent on the under kicks. But quite frankly, when they got here, they still weren't, the most amazing thing we've ever seen. We're still trying to find that consistency. And think about this, Vince. I know college football in the Big 12 and the Pac 12 of yesteryear, it was kind of a situation where you could throw defenses out. Now, in the NFL, defense is very much still in play. You need a good defense. It's the pros for a reason.
But based
How
on a
many
lot of the
times?
rules, though, a lot of what you're able to do on defense
Yep.
is neutered because the NFL is set up to favor the offense based on the rules and the things that the officiating emphasizes.
How many times, though, in the NFL is a game decided by who has the ball last? Who has the ball last is scoring. And if you can't go in all the way and go ahead and get that touchdown, guess what you're doing? You're kicking a field goal. Do you have confidence, whether or not you like to go for fourth downs or not, in your kicker? If Bates is your kicker of the Detroit Lions, I absolutely have confidence in him. Yes, I do want to see him kick a couple more kicks in this final preseason game as a warm up, as a tune up before we get ready for the Rams. But everything that I have seen, he looks like the real deal to me, Vince. He really does.
So it wasn't all good in terms of how things went against the Chiefs on Saturday. They did get burned on a handful of big plays early in the game when Mahomes and the first team was out there. Mahomes did find rookie receiver Xavier Worthy for a nice 49-yard bomb down the right sideline for a big completion, which would set up a field goal to get the Chiefs on the board. And there were a few turnovers that were in the mix as well, a couple of poorly timed fumbles, interception by Sudfeld, and that kind of put the Lions behind the eight ball a little bit as well. And I believe they picked up another big play through the air on the touchdown in the second half that the Chiefs had. That was for like 65 yards. And again, caught him in stride and just an easy walk-in score. So a couple of big plays. The defense got burned on, a few turnovers, which made the game pretty close. And that's something that you got to clean up as you get into the regular season. I know the Lions on occasion can get burned by the big play. Sometimes they get a little bit sloppy with the football, turn the ball over at an inopportune time. And like you pointed out at the top of the show, Phil, a little bit slow to get things going. So I think the fact that the second and third team defense for the Chiefs coming in helped things out a little bit, but those were a few things that the Lions need to figure out how to avoid altogether so as to not have to pay the ultimate price for it in the regular season.
Yeah. So, I listen. It is the preseason, and you can only take so much. And I know that even comes in with some of the praise that we've had with the Lions as well. But um, I will say this: on the whole, there was a pulse. There was a pulse in Kansas City on Saturday, and I know when you go back to Kansas City and you're a road team, regardless of how much you see Mahomes or Kelsey, it just feels a little bit different than going and playing the Giants, even if you're in New York, based on the expectations of the opponent you're playing. It should not be that way when the regular season comes because the target will be on the Lions' back. I'm just saying, for a lot of these guys, it's their first or second game that they've ever suited up for. Things just did not look good one way or the other, either for the Giants as opposed to the Lions too. But on the whole, I saw enough positives to take away from that Kansas City game to feel good that okay, you know what, this isn't just like a case of we're putting everyone in bubble wrap. We're not going to show any plays. We're not going to do anything exciting. And, sorry, Golden Tate, but the games that you have to call on the Lions television side are going to be some of the most vanilla, boring, and bad TV games you'll ever have. Yeah, we'll see what that final game has in store.
So we've talked about over the course of this episode some of the questions that have been answered, and there have been a handful just in the first two preseason games. What is a question that you are still through two preseason games still trying to find the answer to?
It's a little difficult because I don't think it's going to be answered until that first week is done, um, and we actually get to see a little bit of the Lions pass rush and how that's going to look like. I have full confidence in Carlton Davis and the rookie cornerbacks from what I've seen that is it going to be the most formidable group in the NFL? No, probably not. But I think they're going to be serviceable, and I think it's going to be an upgrade over Cam Sutton and what we've had. To me, again, this is going to be the pass rush, right? So what are we getting outside of Aiden? And I know on the interior side, it sounds like we got a good amount of guys there, especially if Levi Onwuzurike is going to make this team. If he's finally in playing shape and ready to contribute, in his final year of his deal. But hey, it is what it is. But to me, it's still going to be the pass rush, and I wasn't fully expecting to get an answer on that. So I will kind of pivot back to what was one of the other things that I wanted to see in the preseason, and that's going to be can Hendon Hooker be your number 2 quarterback? Again, they didn't make a move, so I think you get a little bit of clarity on that if he does get to play the entire first half. Will I still feel 100% sold on it? No, and we're still going to have to just depend that, hey, we've got the best offensive line in football. We probably have the best offensive coordinator in football. They need to make sure that Jared Goff just does not get hit, to truly feel safe about that. But that's kind of where we're at, at this point in time.
The big question that I am still looking to find the answer to is what the Lions are going to do past St. Brown, Laporta, Jameson Williams, and Khalif Raymond as your bottom level depth receiver. And I remember back a few weeks ago when training camp was just getting underway and we were talking about things that impressed us, we called out Darius Fountain as a guy to maybe look out for this training camp and see what he's able to do in the preseason. He really has not done a whole lot. He has really not done anything to create any level of separation to prove that this guy deserves a 53-man roster spot. Now, Isaiah Williams has, from a volume standpoint, 6 catches for 71 yards against the Chiefs on 8 targets. Had a nice afternoon against the Giants last week. Williams is the Big Ten leader in receptions back in 2023, back when he was for Illinois. So from a volume standpoint, he's definitely a guy that's got some good hands. But the knock on him is that he's only 5'10", 5'11" at the max. So he's going to be undersized compared to a lot of corners that he's going to be going up against. So you wonder if that's a realistic option. Caden Davis had that big 61-yard touchdown in the late in the first half yesterday, but that was really all he did on 7 throws that were thrown his way. Vaki was pretty involved in the passing game, but he's not going to be lighting up as a wideout. Donovan Peoples-Jones, 4 targets, 1 catch for 5 yards. He's been given ample opportunity to step up, hasn't taken advantage of it. So I'm not sure, Phil, if we're any closer to figuring out who that depth piece at receiver is going to be once you go past Khalif Raymond on the depth chart.
Well, so I think one of the things that we were looking for is, and you kind of mentioned it with Williams, was maybe not even from a production standpoint. Do they have a physical receiver that is 6'2", that when you get in the red zone isn't going to be a liability to get buckled up, by a bigger safety, by a linebacker, if you're playing the slot a little bit. And I just don't know if the Lions are going to have that look because of the tight ends that they have. And those are almost going to be the guys. And honestly, if we're not signing anyone, if Michael Thomas isn't walking through that door and joining the team, like I've tried to throw out there on occasion, I would be comfortable with
Brandon
Isaiah
Ayuk.
Williams.
I hear he's still looking for a forever home.
Jeez. Yeah, for a forever home, because it's taking forever. My goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just glad we really don't have the distractions that's presenting. But
we were talking about that the other night, how
yeah.
nice it is thinking about what they're going through in San Francisco and what some of the other guys are going through with their contract disputes. We got all that crap out of the way.
Yeah.
Well ahead of time. No distractions. It's just full steam ahead. Let's go win some football games.
Let's go win some football games, like, yeah, we don't have to worry about it. But yeah, no, I think as it stands right now, I don't see Donovan Peoples-Jones making this team, and I would venture that Isaiah Williams would. So
I just don't know if he's the guy you count, because you got to think about it. You look at it through the lens of a guy that you can bring in to replace Josh Reynolds. And Reynolds was a guy, NFC Championship game notwithstanding, was a guy that you could count on in a big spot when you least expect it. I think that Isaiah Williams might be a guy that you can count on for a few catches here and there in between the 20s. But I agree with you, Phil, when you're talking about some of the physical safeties and corners that this team will be going up against down there in the red zone when it's a gotta-have-it situation for the defense, I just don't know that you can afford to look in his direction, and therefore you're looking towards a guy who's going to be a predictable target in Laporta or some of those tight ends that you talked about, Phil, as a more predictable option. And I'm not sure you can trust a guy who stands at 5'11", soaking wet. That's just me.
No. And then I guess the other conversation would be, okay, so it's not going to be a veteran that you're going to sign. What are you willing to trade to go get that guy?
And of course, you don't have any 3rd or 4th round picks next year, so you are limited.
Yeah. So I wouldn't be comfortable probably trading a 2nd round pick, to be honest, for what this is kind of asking for. So then it's a 5th. And then do you have to throw in a pick the following year as well, to get that done? And then is that player going to be worth 2 picks? So
yeah, and then you got to sign him more than likely.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like it might just have to be, some guy that's going to be on the chopping block. And I guess you would just have to look at like who has some of the most stacked wide receiver rooms in the NFL and just look, hey, who might be that odd man out, and would he fit the bill? And then can you throw, okay, maybe not a 5th round pick, but would be a 7th round pick, in lieu of you cutting them, or something like that. So, that's kind of where we're at right now, it seems like.
So it was a Lions winner over the weekend, 24-23 over the Chiefs. They improved to 1-1 on this preseason. Final preseason match comes up this coming Saturday. Ford Field, for the first time since January, will get to host a preseason game against the Pittsburgh Steelers coming to town. And we've made a lot of conversation about their quarterback situation between Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. This was the first time that we saw Russell Wilson over the weekend in their game against the Buffalo Bills. They lost that one in a snooze fest 9-3. Pittsburgh didn't really wow anybody with their offensive performance in the first game either. So, Bill, it's looking like we're going to be up against a first team to 10 wins kind of game here at Ford Field on Saturday.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Steelers have not had an offense since Ben Roethlisberger was their quarterback. And, even the last year or two that he was there, it got real stale. So, I venture you could say really since they had Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown, that they've had an offense that was even worth anything. So,
this isn't Pittsburgh radio, but they did bring in Arthur Smith as their offensive coordinator. So it might be just a matter of getting everybody on the same page and everybody's still getting used to one another, and maybe things will turn around. But as of right now, it still looks like there's quite a bit of hiccups, and maybe the Lions could take advantage of a couple things.
Yeah, for sure. They're also in a tough division as well, So that's listen. You can have the all the studs on defense that they have, but you're not going to be a lick over 500 if you can't score more than 13 points a game, So they got to get somehow. I'm not sure how they're going to get it at this point in time, but yeah, that's the final preseason game, and then season's over.
You got that right.
Look at it too deep and go like, okay, that's what that team is bringing in the following week. We can actually get this thing going, and yes, we get the Los Angeles Rams to open season, and I can't wait.
It's one of those things where it's like you take a step back and think that 3 weeks from now, at the drop of this podcast to your device, we will know how the first game against the Rams will end.
Yeah.
And it just seemed like it was so far off in the distance back when we were doing this through February and March and doing draft talk and OTA talk and everything like that. Now we're within earshot of that first game against the LA Rams. You're listening to this episode of Kneecaps for Breakfast. Vince Progar, Phil Byrne, along with you. Happy you could be along with us for this episode, coming off a Lions victory over the Chiefs. And we talked about the injuries, Phil, that took place at training camp back on Monday night. 3 of the Lions guys who looked to make an impact this season wound up getting some injuries. It could have been a heck of a lot worse. You could not say the same for the Minnesota Vikings. So in the game against the Raiders last week, and you and I talked about the performance of J.J. McCarthy, the rookie out of Michigan, looking to possibly insert himself as a starting quarterback for this team as the season progresses, came out on Monday and complained of some knee soreness. And the next thing you know, he's getting operated on, and it's determined that they did a full repair of his meniscus. He is out for the season. So things have definitely escalated up there in Minnesota. A guy who you probably presumed was going to take over at some point from Sam Darnold as the starting quarterback. Now it's the Sam Darnold show up there until further notice. So tough break for JJ and the Vikings, but maybe that made things a little bit easier for the Lions as far as one more team to get past in the division race.
Yeah, I think the thing with the Vikings though is go back, and as soon as Kirk Cousins went down, their season should have ended. It didn't, and I know they didn't have the greatest season in the world, but I've been fairly impressed with the job that Kevin O'Connell has done up there, at least from the offensive side, of orchestrating something and kind of picking up the pieces. And they still have a lot of good playmakers. Jordan Addison got hurt. Their other Jordan, wide receiver. So yeah, they're kind of dealing with all that. JJ McCarthy will be on ice. It honestly could be a little bit better for his long-term development
I
to be
agree.
honest, to kind of just soak things in a little bit. Um, it was a mass exodus of a lot of guys from that national championship team. Obviously, with everything that's coming down, I'm Harbaugh and that coaching staff. So, hey, timing was right for him to leave. He didn't have anything else to really accomplish in Ann Arbor. So, they're going to put on ice, and I this is a 1 year transition year with Sam Darnold, and I'm sure if McCarthy is fully healthy after this procedure, he'll be the starter entering 2025.
And it seemed like, and again, you have to look at it through the lens of this is preseason. You're not going up against starters consistently and da 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 da. I'm sounding like a broken record over here, but another solid outing by the Chicago Bears as they ran roughshod over the Cincinnati Bengals to now improve to 3-0. They played that third game because they got the Hall of Fame game to start things off in this preseason. So that Bears train looks to be chugging along just fine there on the tracks.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think they're going to be a thorn in the side of a lot of teams, but
Thorn in the
something.
side does not equate to being a problem.
Yeah. So I think that they're going to push for playoff spot. I think they're going to lose some games that they probably have no business of losing. To me, they are a great team on paper, but I still want to see them put it together for a little bit. It is not easy being a rookie quarterback in the NFL. And I think people just have this assumption that, Caleb Williams is going to come in and he's going to light the world on fire. Well, I mean, he had some awesome seasons at USC, but think about how many offensive series that they had that they scored in 3 plays and then their defense gave up another touchdown. So I'm not super convinced that Caleb Williams' play style is cohesive for the NFL for just like how do you preserve a lead? Like I don't think that's something that he really got a ton of experience with just because USC just never really went on these super long drives. So I don't know. I think they are going to be a really good team. They are in the top half of the NFC, no doubt, but we'll see.
And it's also worth noting that the Bears did the majority of their damage against the Bengals with Tyson Bagent at quarterback and not so much Caleb Williams. But nonetheless, they improved to 3-0 on the preseason.
Yep.
Now that we have a couple weeks worth of preseason action under our belt from not only the Lions, but across the NFL as a whole, we're starting to get some questions answered. That's kind of the theme of the episode of this Kneecaps for Breakfast podcast is getting questions answered. So as far as implications for maybe some betting odds as we start to move our way through the preseason, Phil, I know you've had your finger on that pulse a little bit. What are you seeing as far as any movement as far as some of the favorites in the division, maybe the NFC as a whole? Has there been any movement one way or the other as we're now just about complete with 2 weeks worth of preseason action?
So Lions basically, as soon as the season ended, kind of got pigeonholed into being like the team with like the 4th highest odds, or at times seemed like they were around tied being with the Ravens for like the 3rd best odds for Super Bowl for outright betting. So I'm currently looking on FanDuel. The Chiefs are the favorite at plus 600. Niners next best favorite, actually tied. That's new to me. I actually thought that said 650 when I read that just a couple minutes ago. Must have just updated. Niners are plus 600. And then it goes to the Ravens at plus 1,000 and your Detroit Lions at plus 1,200. The next 2 teams plus 1,300, the Philadelphia Eagles and the Texans at plus 1,500. So a couple things that look out to me, or that become apparent to me, is just how much, at least in the betting eye, teams like the Buffalo Bills and the Dallas Cowboys have slipped from maybe where they were a year ago. I don't know outside of Cowboys fans, who would tangibly put a money for that team to win the Super Bowl, but I know the Buffalo Bills were a very high favorite last year, and I think a lot of people have some questions about um, is Sean McDermott going to be there long term? How those things are going to look? Didn't really get a ton of help for Josh Allen in the receiving game. But then you've got like the Jets and the Packers at plus 1,800 behind some of those teams as well. So, that's kind of interesting. So that's Super Bowl. So if we go to like season awards, AP Assistant Coach of the Year, we have Johnson of your Lions as a co-favorite at plus 900. The other co-favorite that he is with is Bobby Slowick of the Texans at plus 900. Shane Waldron of the Bears is in fourth at plus 1,600. And then let me see here for conferences. So again, the Lions at plus 1,200. The Lions to win the NFC is at plus 550, and they are tied with the Eagles. So Lions have better odds than the Eagles to win the Super Bowl, but are tied with the Eagles when it comes to betting. Also worth noting, the Packers are at plus 800 as the fourth best team there. As far as the NFC North goes, let's go ahead and click into that. Lions, your favorite at plus 130. The Packers at plus 200. The Bears at plus 340. And the Vikings in a distant fourth at plus 850. So why are we saying all these things outside of just spouting some numbers? The Lions are the favorite to win the NFC North. They're the second favorite, co-favorite, as well as the Eagles to win the NFC. So that has changed a little bit. So what that is saying to me is that some people have thrown money on the Eagles to win the NFC.
Even though it sounds like Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts hate each other, so they got that working for them.
Yeah. That also could be a lot of folks just getting tired of putting money on the Niners to win the NFC and then just trying to decide between the Lions and the Eagles and, that kind of thing. But that's where we stand with that. So why we say that now is it's a really popular time. You're getting ready to do your fantasy football draft. You're thinking about some season long props that you maybe want to go ahead and look at. These odds are going to change once we hit the regular season, once we get a couple of games under our belt, and they always fluctuate quite a bit by how these teams start. So again, it's Niners and then Lions and Eagles tied for the NFC, and this is on FanDuel. And the Lions have fourth best odds for Super Bowl, and then are the favorites for the NFC North. So keep that in mind, with how the season starts for the Lions.
And I think we're gonna want to go back maybe like September 30th episode of our pod, so that'll put us through week 4, if I'm not mistaken, after the Monday night game. And so actually that episode will drop the following day, Tuesday, October 1st, after the Monday night game against the Seahawks. 4 games are kind of at that quarter pole there. We'll kind of take a look at what those odds look like and see how things have shifted because, like you said, Phil, things have changed just a little bit since the end of the regular season, or the end of the postseason, rather, last year. Now we're into preseason, and of course, these things are going to change. But I think it's definitely a little bit more than just some recency bias with the Lions. They've been a consistent pick to finish atop the NFC North and near the top of the NFC all offseason long, and there doesn't seem to be any momentum lost in that regard all the way through mid-August.
One final one I did want to pass along is also the season win total that's been projected by Vegas to what they set the line for, and then you can go either over or under. That has been at 10.5 for the Lions, and that has not moved. I think that is a very low number, quite frankly, if you're dealing with a team that's got the fourth highest Super Bowl odds. But, um, regular season wins and getting to the Super Bowl are two different stories. So, what that tells me is that they think that the Lions have a tough division, a tough schedule, and 10.5, whether you think it's going to be 10 or 11, it'll be somewhere in that range. But they think the Lions are capable of going on a season run potentially, just like they had last year.
Which is the inverse of the Dallas Cowboys, where they rack up the empty calories year after year after year, 12-5, 13-4, 12-5, 12-5. And there's the sayonara, thanks for playing. We got some lovely gifts for you in the first round.
Arlington's great this time of year. It's just not great for football.
The look on Jerry Jones's face every January is joy to the world. I can tell you that much.
He's a charitable person, Vince. I don't know what to tell you about Jerry Jones.
If that red pot for the Salvation Army doesn't give all away how much of a charitable giving man Jerry Jones is, I don't know what's going to.
Yeah. I don't know what else to say about Jerry Jones, but that's where we are in the podcast. We've talked the episode, I think.
I think that's where we'll call it a day, Phil. After a little bit of Jerry Jones talk, that's going to do it for this episode of Kneecaps for Breakfast. We will break down the final preseason game for the Lions against the Steelers next week, and then we'll start to look ahead as the regular season opener against the LA Rams is getting closer and closer. We are excited. For my buddy Phil Byrne across the way, Vince Progar saying good morning, go Lions, forward down the field, over and out.